Whenever you're ready.
Alrighty, and give it a hot second to breathe. Hello, 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 and welcome to the Building the Broncos podcast today, or the Dove Valley Building Broncos Deep Divers, or whatever you want to call it. I'm Kendell, joined by Lance Sanderson on this fine Tuesday afternoon. How you doing, Lance? Thanks for joining me today. Carl is down in Louisiana right now. He actually, I think, was having to be evacuated because there is a hurricane or tropical storm in the Delta. I don't know. I'm on the other end of the contiguous United States, but
Right.
thank you for good to get to you. And unfortunately, I don't have any beer to give to you. Like last time we were a little bit one-on-one like this, but it's great to see you again.
Yeah, it is. You know, it's been a long time since we actually got to sit down face to face, and to get to meet you in person. That was great to sit down and have a beer and just talk some real life stuff outside of football there for a little while. That was really fun. But thanks for having me, man. And really, I got my Building the Broncos hat on, so we can just call this the Building the Broncos podcast, man. I got to do what I got to do to support the show. But no, man, it's great to be able to sit down and talk with you again. I think this is the third time you and I have had an opportunity to do so outside of the roundtable stuff that we did before the draft, and obviously the NFL draft as well. But man, it's again, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, no problem. Obviously, I had Eric on plenty of times and figured, we got to get Lance on here too. But guys, before we go any farther, got to let you know that tonight's live stream podcast is brought to you by sportsbetting.com. Broncos country gambling is now legal in the great state of Colorado. And here's what makes sportsbetting.com a no-brainer for all sports fans out there. They have sharp odds and low juice. They have in-house bookmakers, and they're not a third-party provider of odds, which have reduced juice and the best prices. They have 24/7 live customer support, which is great. If you have to deal with any automated answers, that's just the worst. So always has a real person to answer you from the United States. And here's the kicker: at sportsbetting.com/Mile High Huddle, you can get a 100% risk-free week of sports betting up to $500. Not just one bet, but for every single one of your bets. Play for a week, and if your losses exceed your winnings at the end of the week, sportsbetting.com/Mile High Huddle will cover 100% of the difference up to $500 with a one-time rollover. What a deal. So head on over to sports betting at www.sportsbetting.com/Mile High Huddle. That's www.sportsbetting.com/Mile High Huddle and capitalize on a risk-free week of sports betting up to $500. Also, guys, make sure you follow us on Twitter. You see Lance's handle there at Sanderson MHH. Follow me also at Nick Kendell MHH. And guys, we were brought to you by Sports Illustrated. Go to Twitter, follow us at Mile High Huddle and at BTB_football pod. So the talk of the hour, probably the talk of the day, and somebody who doesn't get probably that much love, but he's feeling the love today. Broncos give a contract extension to nose tackle, defensive tackle, interior defensive lineman, however you want to categorize him, Mike Purcell, earning a 3-year, $14.8 million contract extension, $6.8 million guaranteed through the 2023 season. So right off the bat, Lance, I want to hear your quick thoughts, and then we're going to get to the chat. We're going to circle back to this, but your quick thoughts on the signing of Mike Purcell.
I like it. I really do. It kind of shows, that when your hard work pays off, and after everything that Purcell showed last year, came in week 5 against the Chargers, and from there really kind of bolstered the Broncos run defense. So as an elite run stuffing defensive lineman, and he's actually shown some chops in the passing game this year as well, kind of some refined hand placement, working on a really nice swim move, very quick first step, so I want to see some more work in that aspect from him, but you're paying less than $5 million on an average per year basis for a guy that's an elite run stuffing player for this Broncos defense. And I don't hate it. It's not like they overspent. It's just a quality deal, and it shows that the hard work you're putting in for this team is actually going to pay off for you in the long run. This is one of the few times we've seen, especially over the last couple of years, John Elway go out and pay one of his young up and coming. Well, not really young, because Purcell's 28, 29 years old, but still
under 30.
An up and coming player. And it's just a good deal for him. Good deal for the Broncos.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna get to some more thoughts there, but first we got to give a little bit of love to the chat here. We got Dank Buds and Black Metal. Sounds like a fun party. Dude, but I love it and won't miss it again. Damon, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. I saw we had another one come in here just a second ago. Here we go. Stu McPeak coming in from the Seattle. Really appreciate you, Stu. I waved at you from the top of Mount Rainier the other day. Thank you very much, Stu. And we got other names in here. We got Tom Moore in the house. We got Miller 707 champ. We got Terry from north of the border. How you doing? Jewel the Fool. Duke Boynton. Duke, good to see you. How you doing? Hope your grandson is doing well. Somebody said that doesn't look like Carl. You're not Ron. So, yeah, we got a good little chat here and a good Tuesday. So it's great. Todd Anderson in the house too. And Stu, thank you very much for coming in. So here we are talking about Mike Purcell, Todd Anderson. Thank you for the comment. Broncos signed him to a deal. Honestly, it caught me a little off guard. And I guess the first place where my mind goes, the Broncos, because this is the Building the Broncos podcast, they've spent 2 third-round picks over the last 2 years on the interior defensive linemen. So you need to have a plethora of those guys anyway. You're going to be using rotation. Draymond Jones, who's injured right now, and McTelvin Najim, who, let's be honest, if everything works ideally this season, he'd probably have a season in the fermentation chamber before we'd see him having some issues with play strength and leverage right now. But Purcell out there playing well. I do got to wonder what does that mean for Shelby Harris? Because in my opinion, I've been as big of a Shelby Harris. Doubter's the wrong word, but I feel like the batted balls and everything he brought last year was not as valuable as it means he was not winning at the point of attack. Good for him to get his hands up, but that was after losing in the initial burst. But Shelby Harris has been playing, I think, his best football that I can remember so far this season.
Yeah.
The Broncos instead went to pay Mike Purcell. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Again, it's a nose tackle. It's not the same as paying a running back, but you're paying for the run game. I don't know. I don't hate the deal by any means. I'm glad to get a guy in there. And I agree with you. He's showing more pass rushing chops, which is good. Wish he'd finish some of those plays more.
Yeah.
But I think that it's a 3-year, $5 million deal. There's not a lot of guarantees. It feels like a very ho-hum solid deal. And Mike Purcell, he's bounced around the league. He's definitely earned it to get to this spot. So I feel really good for the player. I'm not sure about again, it all comes back to paying money for the run game instead of the pass game. I don't think that's the best methodology in today's NFL, especially in a league that even more so than ever, there's more points, there's more passing yards per game than ever before. So paying for run production versus pass production kind of leaves me a little bit unsure, but Mike Purcell's playing well, good run stuffer. And if he can, now that Jarrell Casey's out, if he can get a little bit more in the sub package and show that he belongs there, I mean, maybe this ends up looking back like a really good deal, because I do think you made a good point. Mike Purcell is showing more in the pass game now that opportunity is there. Draymond Jones being hurt, obviously Jarrell Casey being hurt. So it is going to be interesting to see how it plays out, and good for him. And there's really nothing else to say besides, that's the main point. Good for Mike Purcell. Worked hard to get here, earned it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he had what, 3 years, I believe, with Vic Fangio. So he's been familiar with Vic Fangio. And this is prior to signing in Denver on I don't even remember what the contract he had was. It's a very short-term, obviously, deal. And they gave him the restricted free agent tender. $3.259 million is what he's on a contract for this year. And I guess the biggest takeaway for me on this is actually a true extension. So it's not affecting the Broncos cap situation this year. They can still roll over money. Well, actually, I think there's a signing bonus that goes in there, but it's not going to really affect very much on that. So they're going to still be able to roll over a lot of money. And if they still want to go out and they want to pay a guy like a Shelby Harris, who has played a lot better, specifically in the running game, I've been very impressed with him. His play strength at the point of attack, taking on some double teams as well, knifing through as a run defender. Like, there's a lot to like from Shelby Harris as well. But Mike Purcell, and you kind of brought up something that I wanted to get at here. I want to see some more versatility from him, not only in his ability to get after the passer, but his ability to line up not directly as a 0 or a 1 technique. I want to see him slide out to that 2 technique, or get out to the 3 technique and rush the passer from that kind of a place. He has a quick enough first step that I think he can knife through and become a player like that. But at the same time, he's got enough power to be able to hold up still and play in the running game there if they do put him out in a sub package, where you're not going to have to bring an extra blitzer. Like, you're not going to bring Alexander Johnson all the time to rush in and blow up the B gap as well. You can hold off the point of attack there and let Alexander Johnson do the same thing, rushing the A gap like he does on the blitzer in those kind of a situation. Now, to round it back to Shelby Harris here, this one's got a sting for him. I mean, the Broncos, he had an opportunity to go out and get a big deal from the Broncos last year. They decided to not, he won, I think, $10 million on an average per year basis, comes back on a cheap deal this year as well. And now the Broncos, they go out and they show some good faith to Mike Purcell over a guy that had 6 sacks last season. And it was way better as a pass rusher than he is as a run defender. Like, backwards thinking kind of a move, but I kind of wonder if Bill Kolar might have had some say in this as well, just based on the improvement we've seen with Mike Purcell. It's been a drastic improvement, whereas Shelby Harris, who was at least decent last year against run, he wasn't great, but he's got a little bit better. Mike Purcell has improved drastically as a pass rusher this year. So I don't really know the big takeaway from that. I know that Shelby Harris is going to want a lot of money if he continues to go out and play against the passer like he is this year. He's 3 sacks, I think, leading the team as well. If I am remembering correctly, I know him and Chubb have 2 apiece at least. I don't know. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's a good, like you said, it's good for Mike Purcell, man. Really good for Mike Purcell.
Yeah, and it also kind of shows how it can take a little bit for a player to come into their own. I mean, they're not ready-made every time. Not everybody's a first-round pick. Mike Purcell came into the league from your Wyoming Cowboys, and 2013 undrafted free agent, if I recall correctly. But he was 6'3", and he was like right at 300. And, where was he going to play? What's his position? He's put on about 30 pounds since then, and he's very stout at the point of attack. I mean, that's something that really stands out about Purcell. Again, say what you will about the methodology of paying run difference makers versus pass difference makers, but last year he did have the highest run stop percentage of any player in the league. And this year he's at 22nd for his run stop. Last year he was at 14.3. The next highest was 11.1. And if you guys are any sort of statistical nerds out there, he's actually pretty significantly, he's an outlier compared to, there's a bunch of guys clumped in from the 11 to 9% run stop. But this year he's at 22nd ranked overall. And it's obviously a smaller sample size. Right now he's at 9.2%. So still really good. And I think the biggest thing also, again, you're seeing a little bit more versatility. You're going to have to with Draymond Jones injured, with Jarrell Casey being out now, and also more pass rushing ability. So, he's only 28 years old, 29.4, according to Pro Football Focus here. He was born on 4/20, so shout out to the state of Colorado. And,
he was also born in Highlands Ranch, Colorado as well. He grew up in Colorado. So this is a hometown guy. This is another good aspect of this contract is he wants to be in Denver. He wants to be around his hometown. And he's, from everything that I've understood about the guy, he's a leader off the field as well as he is on the field. He's doing some work in the community. He's at home. He wants to be in Denver, and it sounds like he's going to be in Denver for at least the next 3 years, unless something crazy happens. Honestly, there's not a whole lot of big reason to move on from this kind of a deal, especially if that $6.8 million guarantee figure goes over the first 2 years of this extension. Because you have the signing bonus that is going to parlay into, kind of move into this year, and then a little bit for next year. After next year, if there's no guaranteed money, the Broncos can move on from him at 30 years old and say, hey, man, we appreciate what you've done for us. We're going to move in a different direction here. And it's not going to hurt the team as far as any future cap implications go. It's really a solid deal.
It's a stabilizing contract. Really. Yeah. You have one more player that you can count on going into 2021, 2022. So that's great. They did have the second-round tender on him, which was for about $3.2 million. I'm just pulling that off the top of my head. I could be a little bit off on that. We looked it up before, but I didn't write it down, of course.
Yeah, 3.259, sorry.
I was close. There we go. And I want to actually circle back also to a comment you said where you're talking about Mike Purcell maybe playing more 2 and 3 gap or a 3 technique. And honestly, I could see that. Maybe that's not his best get. But if he's making a second contract like this with the Broncos, it's not even so much the technique versatility that he needs, but he needs not to be the guy who's pulled off the field for sub packages. Yeah. You can kind of say, even if he's playing one technique, you're one technique in nickel or dime or quarter. Who knows what the Broncos will do? Who knows what the league will change, especially the AFC West with the throwing around the yard, especially Justin Herbert too now. Gosh. But I think Mike Purcell, we're going to need to see a little bit more in terms of sub packageability. So while it is the other techniques, if he just lives in that 0-1 technique home, but he can provide more in sub packages, I'm fine with that. But paying how many percentage snaps would they be in base? 30% of the time, 30 to 35% of the time, paying somebody that money to just be a nose tackle when nose tackles can be found off the street. Not ones as good as Purcell, but they still can be found off the street. That's the part that makes me not give the deal an A. I'm probably still give it a solid B because it's really not a big risk contract. But there are some things that are worth pontificating on in regards to what this deal means for his usage going forward and how they can maximize the value on the return for this contract.
Yeah, it seems with the added snaps that he's playing right now, that swim move that he had, I think it was against the screenplay against the Pittsburgh Steelers where he actually did get a sack. It's a little bit more prevalent. That first step, man, he's such even being at what 325, 330 at play weight right now. That quick first step that he has and his ability to shoot the gap and not only be able to do that, but the manpower strength that he has to be able to hold up at the point of attack in the running game. Like there's some versatility there. I agree with you. You need to be able to play some more on second down long, third down long, obvious passing situations in the sub packages. No, you're absolutely right, man. You really are.
And I think the big question here coming back also, actually, let's get to the super chat real quick. We'll come back to this, no doubt. So we got Duke coming in, the proud grandfather there, man. Duke, I'm really proud for you, buddy. Do either of you see Coach Vic bringing the Broncos to the promised land? It doesn't have to be this year, but in the future. I mean, as much as this is a cop-out, Duke, it really comes down to the quarterback position. I think Vic Fangio is a good enough coach where if you have the right pieces around him, then you got no issue doing that. He could definitely win a Super Bowl, but like, you never see a Hall of Fame coach that didn't coach multiple Hall of Fame players. So, and another, I mean, it's a cliche for a reason. It's about the Jimmys and Joes, not the X's and O's. And it starts with the quarterback. So if Locke ends up being the dude, I think you have a chance. I really do. And it does seem like this team hasn't bought out on Vic Fangio. There is a little bit of worry that if they keep losing, I think that old school type of coach can grow pretty tiresome. When you're winning, you can kind of excuse the old school military drill sergeant, but when you're not winning, it's really not fun. So we'll see. I definitely think it's possible, but as lame as it is, this is the answer to so many questions on here. Comes back to the quarterback. Well,
not only that, but it comes back to how especially with Drew Lock, how does Pat Shurmur and Mike Shula develop him? And John Elway went out and gave him a lot of weapons, and obviously he's hurt right now, so we're not going to see him for at least this week and potentially even against the Miami Dolphins. We'll see. It sounds like he could potentially go against the Miami Dolphins, but circle your schedule, guys, for Kansas City Chiefs in week 7. Like that's if Drew Lock is ready to go, week 7 is when the Broncos absolutely need to have him. I think they could probably ride it out with Rippon or potentially even Blake Bortles. I don't want to see Bortles, but at the same time, with the way the Broncos are playing against the Patriots right now, without Cam Newton potentially this week, Brian Hoyer looked really bad. Jarrett Stidham looked really bad. But if Drew Lock can come back and play against the Kansas City Chiefs and actually right the ship this way, it's really going to have to depend on how he develops and how this offense can evolve around him without Courtland Sutton. Is he going to be able to right this ship and get the team going in the correct direction? And this is where the evaluation period is for him. Like, honestly, and it's also the evaluation period for Vic Fangio. You've got a young quarterback, a lot of weapons missing, a lot of injuries. He has to be able to step up in these critical coaching situations where he hasn't to date. And that's one thing that I will say is he has been pretty bad in critical coaching situations. Obviously, the 4th and 1 against Tennessee, throwing the ball, 3 times in first and goal against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the timeout situations. There's just multiple different things, and going even back to last year, there was some as well. But if Vic Fangio can right the ship and get these guys in critical coaching situations where he's going to make the correct decision, and Drew Lock develops, I think you really have a coach here. And Vic's a great coach; he's a great defensive mind, but he has to be able to take control of this team as a head coach, not only as a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and I know if the Broncos, let's say they go down and they lose these next 3 games and what would that be? 1-6 heading into the bye. There's going to be chatter from some areas. I don't want to give light to any places. That would be kind of the hot take market. But calling for Vic Fangio's job. But I mean, as you gotta be able to look at this with nuance. This team is very injured. It was always going to be a transition year, and then on top of the state of the world, as I like to say on here, since we're not allowed to say the C word on here. But something that you have to take into account also with the Broncos having these legal battles going on, it's no secret that the Broncos as an organization, relatively to the rest of the league, are a cash poor organization. Yep. So if you are moving on from Vic Fangio after this year, guess what that means? You're paying him everything. The coach's contract's 100% guaranteed on top of another new coach that you have to try to lure in. So unless the Broncos, like the team is on a full out mutiny, like what's going on in the Jets right now. But if that happens here, then you could see him move on. But right now, I think that we have to talk about the logistics and with how the Broncos are set up right now financially with the Bolin dispute going on right now. I don't see them being in a position unless it was an absolute just falling apart. Ship is sinking. Guys are like calling them out constantly, just loss of control, institutional control. other than that, I think you're probably going to have Vic Fangio this year anyway. So he's going to get that grace period. And part of that is just because of the money side of things. I mean, it sucks to talk about it, especially when the Chiefs are throwing out money left and right because the Hunt family's loaded. But that's just where we are.
No, you're absolutely right there. And I think that Vic Fangio is going to get this year regardless. You got to at least allow him to get into year 3. And I think you almost have to let him have year 3 as well. But it is fair to start putting him under the microscope just a little bit and maybe even suggest that his seat is getting a little bit warm, not like burning hot seat. He's going to get fired at the end of the year, but you can go into next year and say, based on even last year with all the injuries, with the things that shall not be mentioned, like you can get at least kind of an idea of, is this the right guy pulling the strings? Is this the right guy trying to steer the ship in the correct direction? And you can get that, and getting lockback is going to help that significantly. But you can go into year 3 and say, after 2 years, we've had a lot of really close losses and some questionable coaching decisions. Yeah, he meandered his way through the crazy rash of injuries and whatnot. But is this guy the right guy? Is he the one that we are absolutely going to tie ourselves to for the long term? I think that's a pretty valid question. We still have to see how the remainder of this year plays out. But going into next year, I would not surprise me to see Vic Fangio as one of those guys on a warming seat at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest thing is, ear to the ground. What is the locker room saying? Are they still bought in? Are they willing to bat for him? Because, I mean, again, those old school coaches, Bill Belichick, when things are going well, people are like, oh, that's just Bill Belichick when he's an absolute just jerk to the media and some of his players and whatnot. But when you're like that and you're losing, Josh McDaniels here, for example, that gets stale really quickly. And Vic Fangio, I mean, sometimes he can be a little prickly. He's an old school guy. I mean, that is what he is. And that shtick can get tiresome for some of those new age players. So we'll see. I do think the Broncos do have a good young core. I mean, they've been drafting leaders and captains. So I'm not worried about it being a full on, Titanic sinking outside of the scope of injuries. But we'll see what happens. We got to get to some of these chats here. Good conversation so far. If I do say so myself, thanks for coming on again, Lance. This Carl's down in Louisiana. So you guys pray that no, what is it? Is it gators down there or crocodiles? I don't even know. It's not my cup of tea. I'm from Iowa. I don't know.
Large reptiles. Let's just put it that way, because there's a lot of them down there.
Possums and reptiles. So with no dead money, or am I mistaken? You are 100% correct. That guaranteed, the signing bonus is that guaranteed money. And once the Titans traded him, they are still on the hook for the guaranteed money. But he has no guaranteed money left on his contract. So that means the Broncos could cut him and move on from him if they wanted. It also gives them a lot of leverage in a restructure. If they want to as well, they can lower that yearly cap hit and give Casey some more guaranteed money. And the same thing with AJ Boye as well. No, you didn't ask that, but both those guys you traded for big contracts. None of that guaranteed money comes with. It's all still being paid out. They actually have to pay it up front, but then there's a word for it, prorated across the duration of the contract. So nope, no dead money with Casey. So good question, though. And I mean, who knows what that means for his future? We got Mr. Boggins coming in. Good to see you, Mr. Boggins. Nick, do you still believe that we should sign Lindsey to a 5-year extension? RBM. Oh, you're giving me a hard time. He's giving me this is a trap. This is a trap. Nick, you still believe? I don't remember saying that. And then now I see the RBM, which stands for Running Backs Matter. I'll tell you what, if Lindsey wants to take a deal that's for about $4 million a year for 5 years, then we can talk. But I'm thinking he's probably going to want more than that, and he probably deserves more than that. But hashtag RBDM. Sorry, running backs don't matter. No.
There's a great quote, and I hope you have it pulled up and ready to go here, from Michael David Smith of Pro Football Network, Pro Football Talk, or something like that. But anyways, it's going through all of the teams that have brought in high capital and paid running backs big money, and about how you've got the Jacksonville Jaguars, who just moved on from Leonard Fournette, who was the number 4 overall pick a few years ago. And they have an undrafted rookie free agent in James Robinson, who is on pace for like 1,160 yards this year. And it'd be a better rushing season than Leonard Fournette has ever had. There's another one, the Detroit Lions, who have Kerryon Johnson and DeAndre Swift, who have been not playing at all. They've been hurt. And Adrian Peterson, a 35-year-old free agent, is coming in, and he's on pace to have like 900 yards rushing this year. Like, running backs don't matter. Nick, if you got that, go ahead and read it off, man.
For sure. I've been muting myself and unmuting because the construction going on around here. But this is from the CEO of the managing editor, of Pro Football Focus or Pro Football Talk, Michael David Smith. Yesterday, the Browns starting running back Nick Chubb was lost after an injury after 6 carries. The Browns then proceeded to rush for 307 yards, the most in an NFL game in 2 years. Saquon Barkley was lost for the season. He had 34 yards and 19 carries. And now the career backups in Wayne Gallman and revival player Devonta Freeman have more yards on fewer carries. The Lions have recently used 2 early second-round picks on running backs, DeAndre Swift, who, if you guys saw that drop catch week 1, yikes, as well as Kerryon Johnson. Guess who's their leading rusher right now? 35-year-old Adrian Peterson, who was picked off the scrap heap. I mean, Hall of Fame player, but 35 years old at running back is like 120 years old for like normal human life.
Yep.
You have also the Jaguars, who cut number 4 overall pick Leonard Fournette and replaced him with James Robinson, who is on pace for 1,140 yards and 644 receiving yards. My fantasy team loves him. The Dolphins traded for Matt Breida and also signed Jordan Howard, yet they're using Myles Gaskin, who was a 7th-round pick. The Carolina Panthers, and I mean, I don't want to disrespect Christian McCaffrey here, but highest paid running back in the NFL, he gets hurt, and he's been replaced by Mike Davis, who has more yards from scrimmage already than McCaffrey, and the Panthers have won both games with McCaffrey being out. So again, there's obviously, it's more complicated than that. I mean, having a running back like McCaffrey changes how defenses can play you.
Yep.
And so there is, I mean, there's obviously, we could go on and on about this, but if there's any position in the NFL that's as replaceable than the running back, I don't know what it is, because these teams, they use these early picks on them. They give out these huge contracts, and a lot of times you don't get the return on investment. So far, Melvin Gordon looks like he's giving back equitable return on investment, which is both surprising and great to see. He's running extremely well, and that is no thanks to the interior offensive line, who are getting literally no push right now.
Yep.
But typically, running backs just, I mean, that's too on brand for this show, but typically running backs, don't draft them early, don't pay them big deals. More times than not, you're going to get burned.
I got another example for you. Look at what the team that the Broncos just played last Thursday did. They went out and signed Le'Veon Bell to a massive contract. He's been hurt the last 2 years, and Frank Gore, 37-year-old Frank Gore, is starting for them and actually running the football pretty well. Now, this is the greatest joke in the history of all football. There are 3 things that you can count on in life: death, taxes, and Frank Gore rushing for 800 yards. I mean, 37-year-old Frank Gore is going to do it again, guys. I'm telling you, he's playing pretty decent football right now. It's fun to watch, but it's also hard to watch.
He's the only person, though, that Jewel can cover on a wheel route.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm pretty sure about that.
That's very true, man.
So we got another one coming in here. We got Tom El Greco coming in. Ooh, Canadian. $5. How are you doing from north of the border there? Let us know whereabouts you are in Canada. I can, if it doesn't rain this weekend, I was going to try to go to the Olympics and go to Hurricane Ridge and wave to the Vancouver area from there, but it looks like it might be a little bit cloudy. Here we go. With all the good quarterbacks drafted in the past years, where do you think Drew Lock stands? Top 5, top 10? Let me know.
Too early to tell.
Sorry, I can't laugh in the mic. That's such a cop-out answer, but we don't have enough data to say on him right now. You know, out of all the quarterbacks drafted in the last few years, I will say, even though he hasn't been hurt, I'm feeling better and better about, and it's not completely this guy's fault, but I'm feeling better and better about Drew Lock over Daniel Jones. And I also think that I'd rather have Drew Lock than Dwayne Haskins, but obviously Kyler Murray is the crown jewel of that one. Yeah. In this last draft, let me see, who did Joe Burrow? Probably take Joe Burrow over Drew Lock. Who was the other? I can't even remember the quarterbacks on the top of my head now.
Yeah, me neither.
I would take Sam Darnold over Drew Lock, even though he is. I mean, we watched that game. Sam Darnold was out there making plays left and right, but he's just surrounded by dog poop all around him, and that starts at the coaching staff.
I was so impressed, though. I was honestly so impressed with his ability to actually extend the play and throw the ball down the field, and despite being absolutely destroyed. I mean, Bradley Chubb had 10 pressures, 2.5 sacks, 3 sacks, 6 total sacks against him last week. And he still was able to escape and still try to make plays. And he actually had the Jets in position to they had a chance to actually come back and win that game. Brett Rippon didn't help anything by any stretch of the imagination. But when the opportunity presented itself, Sam Darnold came back and actually took the ball down the field, scored a touchdown. There's a lot to like with Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I mean, he does. My comp coming into that draft was Sam Darnold reminds me a lot of Tony Romo. And some of that Houdini BS that he had in the podcast running around off platform, and then the sneaky athleticism, which is code for white guy who can run, it's out there. And I was not again, bringing it back to Wyoming, I was not the biggest Josh Allen fan coming in because I had some Paxton Lynch PTSD, but he's looking incredible as well. So I think that you can't put Drew Lock in front of those guys. Obviously, you could put him in front of Rosen. And also you can't put him in front of Lamar Jackson. Can't forget the reigning MVP. That's off the top of my head, though. That's all I can think of right now. Was there another first-round quarterback last year? We weren't even in the quarterback market because we saw enough from Drew Lock that I didn't.
I don't even remember. I don't even remember. Like I didn't really care. I knew that Drew Lock was going to be the guy, so I don't even remember. I mean, obviously, we all studied Joe Burrow.
We got Buana coming in here. We already mentioned one of them, Justin Herbert. Herbert's only 2 games so far. Justin Herbert looks real. One of the things coming out of Oregon is they ran a very quick screen-oriented pass game, which does not work for Justin Herbert. Now he's running a vertical pass game with that athleticism. And Benjamin Almight pretty much said that if Herbert had come out in that draft, Herbert probably would have been a Bronco because Elway was drooling for him. Now you got him in the AFC West, but granted, he's not playing in front of any fans, so like, how can you even say he's good? But also Tua, wait and see on Tua. And there's also Jordan Love. Minshew is not a first-round quarterback. That's a good, honestly, that's something where I need to see more from Drew Lock, but we should come back and kind of pick apart this, where we'd rank Drew Lock. And 2 names that I'm not ready to say yet, I kind of have them in the same category right now, Minshew would be one of them. I think Lock has better tools, but Minshew's pocket movement and processing and accuracy, I think, are better. And then Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's one who, man, the Brown's going to Brown, right? I mean, I guess they didn't take Rosen number 1 overall, and Josh Allen was even saying, hey, take me, I got to be the number 1. And I was laughing about that back then too. Guys, slap me on the wrist. Give me a hard time. I was not a Josh Allen truther by any means. Again, I think I blame partially Paxton Lynch because it's an easy cop-out. But it will be interesting to see. So good question there. We kind of went down the rabbit hole. But here we go. We got Madungus coming in now. Yeah, thank you, Buana, for being the man behind the scenes, dabbling on the keys. Maybe it's just me, but I think I would rather have AP over Melvin Gordon. Sorry, not sorry. No. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, AP is a good running back, but he brings virtually nothing in the pass game, and they both have fumbling issues. So if you want to talk like how little they're paying for AP in comparison to Gordon, maybe we could have that conversation, but in a vacuum, Gordon is so incredibly more talented in the pass game than Adrian Peterson is, and that's always been the case. Adrian Peterson's always been that like 1980s kind of just head of steam, and you give it to him, and then eventually he might break an 80-yarder. I mean, we saw that when Vikings played the Broncos 2017, 2016. I can't remember what year that was. It was a good
2015.
Game. 2015. Was the Super Bowl year?
That was the Super Bowl year. Yeah. It was actually really bad because I called that play before it happened. The Broncos had the Vikings at like midfield on a 4th and 1. And I was like, watching, they're going to hand it off to Adrian Peterson here on a 4th and 1. And he's going to go like 49 yards untouched for a touchdown. And sure as heck, they turned around and handed it off to him. And he ran 49 yards untouched for a touchdown to actually put the Vikings back into the game there too. And the Vikings were playing great defensively that game as well.
Yep. So that's an interesting question there. I think it's thought-provoking in a way where if you want to talk using your resources, then there's a conversation to be had. But in a vacuum, it's not close. And I want to come back. I was definitely one of the bigger detractors because I don't believe in paying running backs big contracts because typically a running back is best on their rookie deal. So my opinion on running backs, my philosophy is you draft them round day 3 or undrafted free agent. You use a shotgun approach. You keep bringing them in and you use them on that rookie contract. And once they're used up, then you let them walk. So, I mean, that's the Broncos have that's the Mike Shanahan method. Honestly, I don't want to take full credit for it. That's what Mike Shanahan did year after year, and it worked really well. So that's just where I'm at. But that being said, Melvin Gordon has been, I would say right now, he's been the third best offensive player. No, second best offensive player for them so far. I think Garrett Bowles has been the best offensive player for them. I think that there's an argument for Noah Fant as well, even though he has the ups and downs. But Noah Fant's explosive ability, I mean, from the tight end position, it's rare. So and the mismatches that he can create, and for other guys because of that. But because Noah Fant going down, it's a little bit of inconsistency, especially in that Tampa game. Melvin Gordon's probably been the second best guy right now. So Philip Lindsay coming back, we'll see how that changes things. Probably coming back. But I'm very happy to say at this point, the deal is about as good as it can be for paying a running back a second contract. And it's not a long-term deal too. It's is it 2 years? Is it a 2-year deal?
It's 2 year. Yeah, 2 year deal. 2 years, $16 million.
I can never remember because the way the guarantees go over sometimes. Like, is it a 2-year deal or is it a 4-year deal that's essentially a 2-year deal, like the Juwan James deal?
Yeah,
so
this was a straight up 2-year deal. Speaking of the best offensive players, you want to talk about not only the best offensive player for the Broncos, but the best total player and most consistent player for the Broncos team in actuality is Big 72 on the left side, man. Garrett Bowles has been the most consistent player. He's been the best offensive player for this Broncos team. And I don't think there's necessarily any debate for that. And fun fact for everybody, and if you don't listen to Broncos Country tonight on 850 KOA or even listen to it as a podcast after the fact, Benjamin Albright last night on Broncos Country Tonight actually let something slip. And he said that the Broncos are currently working on a contract extension for Garrett Bowles. Now, Nick, I know you had the article up earlier, what was last week, I think, on why it was a mistake for the Broncos to pass up on the fifth year option, for Garrett Bowles. And if anybody has followed Dove Valley Deep Divers at all, you will know that me and Eric have been pounding the table on as to why that has been a drastic mistake for the Broncos. And he has come out this year and he has absolutely proved both of us right. He proved you right as well. We're talking about like what, 11.0, what I have it right here, $11.064 million on the 5th-year option for the Broncos if they were to extend that, and that would have been for next year. That in and of itself would rank like 17th amongst left tackles in the NFL as of like today. Like, are you telling me that Garrett Bowles is not worth that kind of a contract? You're absolutely kidding me. We're talking the 99.1% pass blocking efficiency, number one in the NFL of any player that has 159 pass rush snaps like Garrett Bowles has. 3 total pressures, again, number one in the NFL. He has two holding penalties this year, one of which, and I know, Nick, you're on record saying that was an absolute trash call against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers where he got called for a holding penalty there. Like, Garrett Bowles has come out and he has proved everybody, like, go back to what, like, his original draft process, the draft process, 2017. Everyone said that he has the high-end athleticism and the meanness and the ability to turn into a quality left tackle. It's going to take –
you want your tackles with dancing bears.
Yep. And he was a dancing bear. He absolutely is a dancing bear even now. But everyone also said that it was going to be a 2 to 3 year project because he's so raw. And it's a big risk on a guy that's 25 years old coming out in the NFL draft. Like, that's a huge risk. And the Broncos decided they were going to take that risk. And we're now going into year 4 for Garrett Bowles. 2 to 3 years. You remember that? It was going to take him a long time. Now, also take into consideration, he's never had a offensive line coach in back-to-back seasons going back to high school. So there's a lot of development to work with. And now he has back-to-back years of arguably the best offensive line coach the NFL has seen outside of Dante Scarnecchia, who was the greatest offensive line coach, I think, ever, and was the offensive line coach for the New England Patriots for all those years. And now we're starting to see the fruit of that labor. Like, it really is. Garrett Bowles has been absolutely spectacular this year. And I don't think there's any way anyone can rebut that. Like, he's playing at a top 5 level right now.
Yeah, I do want to chime in here a little bit. Again, I know that it's really easy to split people into 2 groups. Don't want to go down the politics analogy there. But, I mean, we're seeing it all the time. So I definitely I didn't understand it in hindsight, not extending the 5th-year option because that 5th-year option was only guaranteed for injury. Yep. And coming into the season, say what you will about Garrett Bowles, I don't care. But if you said that he was injury prone or anything like that, you're a freaking liar because he only missed 1/2 of his entire career. And that was like it would have been his rookie season. He was carted off the field, looked bad, and then he came back and played the next week. So that 5th-year option only guaranteed for injury, such a low risk. And then you get yourself another year for a player who started to look a little bit better last year. Once Locke was in, granted, having a quarterback that is not a complete statue helps, or having one that's not a deer in the headlights helps. Flacco and Driscoll. I thought it just made so much sense because let's say Garrett Bowles sucked this year and the penalties were high again. He's probably not injured. And what does that mean? You can rescind it for no cost. So I in hindsight, obviously it's capped in hindsight here, but we were saying this last year as well. It's like for a left tackle on the market, he said he might be the 17th highest paid left tackle. I think that might be all tackles overall.
No,
it's for left tackle only.
I have it pulled up on overthecap.com right now as far as left tackles are concerned, 17th highest That would be for this year. So if they paid him $11 million this year, but on an average per year basis, 64 million dollars slots him right behind. Let me pull it back up here. Slots him right behind Dwayne Brown, who's also 35 years old, playing for the Seattle Seahawks, and that would be number 17 in between Dwayne Brown and Andrew Whitworth.
So yeah, it looks pretty foolish in hindsight not doing that. The Broncos do have that franchise tag in their back pocket, which right now, I mean, Justin Simmons, I think, is probably playing better than some people would have you believe. But I don't think he's playing at pay him the best safety in the NFL money. And also putting that tag on him back-to-back years really expands it. So right now, I think Garrett Bowles is the obvious choice for that tag if they don't get an extension. So you lose that flexibility, which would have been nice to have if you had that fifth-year option. Yep. I would be remiss to say that Garrett Bowles' struggle or non-struggles come in a year where it seems like the NFL officials have really swallowed their whistles when it comes to holds. There have been some plays that he's been holding. I mean, I was like, oh, that looks like a hold. And I think last year would have been called as a hold. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's still stuff to work on. But I feel like his balance, his overall technique, he's not lunging as much. And I think that is helping him a heck of a lot. And we got Casey Martin coming in here with the statistics, 59% decrease in holding penalties across the league as compared to this point last year. That's definitely a big part of it as well. You can't talk about Garrett Bowles' improvement this year without having that be in the abstract of his overall narrative. But I think that he's playing extremely well. He's been the Broncos' best offensive player so far this season. And I guess to pivot here just a little bit, how much does this fly in the face of if the Broncos had fixed the tackle position, they would be Super Bowl contenders conversation narrative that had been plaguing Broncos country for the past few seasons, where everything was Garrett Bowles' fault on offense. Again, guys, as dead horse, it all comes back to quarterback. Everything feeds into itself, but if you don't have that guy under center, it doesn't matter unless you have like an all-time defense. But that's really rare.
To go back to that, the quarterback play, even this year, the Broncos quarterback play is a lot better without Locke, even as well. Jeff Driscoll being able to at least move around. Yeah, he holds on to the ball a lot. And Brett Rippon getting the ball out quick against the Jets looks really well. But still, you're talking Garrett Bowles only has 3 total pressures allowed, 0 sacks in 4 games. Like, that's quality play with lackluster quarterback play. Like, he actually took that step forward. There's absolutely no denying that. Now, this actually begs the question because, as I said, Benjamin Albright's let loose that the Broncos are actively working on a contract extension for him. And I'm looking at the left tackle position here again, and there's a guy in Detroit that just got paid a huge contract in Taylor Decker, $14.912 million on an average per year basis. Nick, and I want to just kind of project a little bit to you here on that. Is it worth it to offer that as a baseline to Garrett Bowles, or are you looking a little bit less than that? Like, where do you think that Bowles should line up if the Broncos were going to offer him a contract extension prior to the franchise tag, which is going to see him paid like $17 million?
I mean, the Broncos it's one of those things where the Broncos probably would be very smart. You wish they'd given him the 5th-year option again. It sucks in hindsight because you'd have a bigger sample size. You wouldn't be forced to do that. You'd have him in your pocket for another year to see if this holds. That's not a joke, guys. If this carries over. But I think that right now you're probably talking about DJ Humphrey's contract, Jack Conklin contract as those baselines, and Decker as well. So he's looking probably for 15, 16 a year, and anything less than that, obviously the Broncos probably come at him with 13 to 14 million a year. Why would he take it? Why would he take it? I mean, I understand, this might be his chance to cash in. And I know that it was really beat on when he was coming out that he's an older offensive tackle. I really don't care about that much for the offensive line position, because you have guys, how old? You listed some of the guys that are paid around that range, still playing high quality football. Whitworth and Dwayne Brown, who are like 35, 36 and still playing great football. So I wasn't as worried about that. Like, let's say he was a 25-year-old running back or wide receiver coming in. We have an issue, but for an offensive lineman, not as big of an issue. So I think Garrett Bowles, if they are going to approach him with an extension, I would be very surprised, and I'd want to talk with his agent if he jumped at anything that was less than, let's say, 14.5 million. But it also comes down to the length, the guaranteed, and a bunch of those little details that if we talked about them too long, it'd just be speculation down a rabbit hole that we don't have time for.
Right. I just want to give you kind of a side-by-side comparison here, and I've got some statistics pulled up for you as well. Let's go Taylor Decker here, 2017, 2 sacks, 3 hits, 16 hurries, 6 penalties as well. 2018, 3 sacks, 4 hits, 30 hurries, 37 pressures as well. 2019, 7 sacks total, 4 hits, 24 hurries, 35 total pressures. That's Taylor Decker there for you. And to go back, just because these are the same 3 seasons, Garrett Bowles had 8 sacks, 10 hits, 33 hurries, and 51 pressures in his rookie year, 2017. Then he had 2 sacks, 6 hits, 21 hurries, and 29 total pressures in 2018. And in 2019, which was probably his best actual overall season, even though he did have a massive amount of holding penalties, 4 sacks, 4 hits, 23 hurries, and 31 total pressures as a whole. To me, Garrett Bowles has been a much better player, much more consistent player than Taylor Decker has. And Taylor Decker has Matthew Stafford on his side playing quarterback, who can actually move around, distribute the ball around quickly. And like Garrett Bowles has had, 9 quarterbacks, 8, 9 quarterbacks, something like that.
Too many.
Yeah, way too many. Like, quarterback play does play a part in this, but we're seeing Garrett Bowles actually evolve into a player that everyone kind of projected him to be. But they, again, like I said earlier, it was going to take him 2 to 3 years to get there. And we're now starting year 4, and he is there.
Yep. And I don't want to, again, we need to talk about some other things. Get to the chat here. You guys are great. We love you. But something that I thought was really interesting last year from Pro Football Focus is Timo Muski, who is a statistical, I think he has his master's in statistical analysis. He works for PFF now. He's actually over in Germany somewhere, but he did a piece on the learning curve for positions and players. And like one of the positions, like they come in and they're as good as they're ever going to be, typically is running back. Again, running backs, draft them low, just use them up. They don't really get better. They pretty much stay what they are. Offensive tackles tend to be really bad year 1, get a little better year 2, get a little better year 3, and then year 4 is where you see where they're going to be for the rest of their career. So it's the one position that actually takes the longest to kind of to get past the learning curve of the college game to the NFL game. And that's even more so with Garrett Bowles. I mean, let's not forget that he played 1 year at Utah. Before that, he was playing at Snow Valley Community College, and he was first a defensive tackle before offensive line. So, I mean, it's a good story here. It's a good reminder of being patient and not quitting on tools as long as those guys with the tools are still working and putting in the work and are mentally in the game, which by all accounts sounds like it's true for Garrett Bowles this offseason. He's putting in the work. I mean, obviously we know he has learning disability, but I mean, it's turned around and it's a success story. So, I mean, the Broncos are in a weird position now, but he really is a can't lose him guy. So we have WE coming in here first, guys, though. I want to get to station identification because we don't have much time left. This is the Building the Broncos podcast. Typically, Carl will be here. We got Lance filling in today. We really appreciate that. You can follow us on Twitter at BTB Football Pod. We are part of Mile High Huddle. That's at Mile High Huddle. That's an affiliate of Sports Illustrated. And also important, if you like the swag today, actually, Lance is wearing it as well, the Building the Broncos hat. I don't have my shirt here today. I should have a Mile High Insiders hat coming soon. And probably most importantly, guys, subscribe, like, and share. And that can help us a heck of a lot. So get into the chat here. We got WE coming in here. Call me crazy, but it's fair to say that Moody has been the best rookie so far for the Broncos. Compared to Okudah, he's a steal. Judy isn't getting enough targets as a wide receiver 1. There's a lot to unpack here. I think Moody has been the Broncos' best rookie. He's playing extremely well. I actually have some stats here from Eric Trickle I can go through in a second. Okudah is playing, I think, up and down, but I think Okudah is being asked to do harder assignments. He's much more on an island than Moody is, where the Broncos defense and the coverage is much more team-oriented, where you're going to have more guys on an island with the Patriot style of defense, especially in the secondary.
Yeah, straight man coverage.
Yep. I mean, press man even. So, and then it's Judy getting enough targets as wide receiver 1. Judy, I think I'm not really worried about Judy because if you watch the all 22, he's getting separation. The drops were worrisome, but like right now, the quarterbacks are what's holding him back. So like, what can he even do? I'm sorry, Judy, that you're dealing with this. I'm sorry that Locke's hurt for you. And I'm sorry that Sutton's hurt also because he would have been, I think Judy without playing so much press because Sutton's just a press eater would have been way better for him. But Moody is playing incredible. Let's get to this tweet here from Eric Trickle. So outside of the Steelers game, which he gave up that one big play, which can be argued was a push off, but it is what it is. Moody has 16.4 snaps per reception, which is great. 7.7 snaps per target, 0.5 yards per snap, and 57.5 NFL rating, which would rank him as the 3rd, 24th, first in terms of yards per snap and sixth in the NFL against other cornerbacks. That's not just rookies. That's other cornerbacks.
Yep.
And the fact that his snap to target is so high, but his snaps per reception is so low is outstanding. And again, Ojemudia, there's been some ups and downs so far this season. It was always going to be expected. But for him, especially for any cornerback, it's one of those things where you can really pick out the people who are box score scouts and just get mad at the result versus those who understand the game and can appreciate the process. Like that pass interference last week, I would never have Ojemudia do anything differently. If you get called that, I've almost dropped the F-bomb. Screw them. I don't even care. Like, that's a process over result. You did everything right. They called you on it. Screw them. Do it again. If they call it, I'll take that every time.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% in agreement with you. That was textbook, absolutely textbook coverage by Michael Ojemudia there down the left side. Like, he had a big pass break up there. The one thing that I want to see him work on is just being able to catch the football, man. He's a couple different times. He did have that great diving interception against the Tennessee Titans week 1, where Alexander Johnson had that bonehead unnecessary roughness penalty. And you can call it ticky-tack if you want to, but that's kind of the way that the NFL is going right now. They're calling a little bit more defensive penalties, getting away from the offensive holding penalties, kind of shrinking the game down a little bit with stuff like that, producing some more points with getting some big chunk plays down the field. That was a 42-yard penalty on Ojemudia on that play or something like that. Huge penalty.
So and he belongs. I mean, that's just the long and short of it. Like, he's not overwhelmed out there. We never even saw Brandon Langley because he was so overwhelmed. And Yadam was not staying in phase nearly enough. And once they moved to more of an off coverage scheme, he had issues. But Ojemudia, I mean, hats off to the coaching staff for this one. Hats off to the scouting department, because scouting him at Iowa with how simple their coverages were with that a lot of cover 3 and bail technique. He's playing extremely well. And I'm honestly, this is a show for another time, but I was really scared about cornerback coming into the year, given how many questions there are. A lot of them are turning up good. I mean, Boye is going to come back very soon. Did they even have to rush him back? Bassey's been not good, but he got replaced. Bosby, very short sample size, looked incredible. And Callahan's playing incredibly well. So it was a concern, but things are coming out pretty well there. And that's something we have not been able to say about the Broncos in 2020 often this year. So we will take it.
Right. I want to go back and rebut the last part of his statement there, that Jerry Jeudy has not gotten enough targets as a wide receiver 1. And maybe that last week against the New York Jets, I had it pulled up here. Hold on just a sec. So last week against the Jets, he had 4 targets, 2 catches for 61 yards, and obviously that beautiful touchdown catch. But we'll go back to week 1 against the Tennessee Titans. He had 8 targets, 4 catches for 56 yards, 8 targets. That's the number you want to look at here. 7 targets against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 4 catches, 62 yards there. 9 targets against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, it may not be, Michael Thomas where he's catching 14 balls a game, but 7, 8, 9 targets, that's a pretty significant rep share there. Like that, they're not letting him just run by the wayside here. And obviously you really do have to take into effect the play calling, because the quarterback situation isn't great. Obviously the quarterback situation not being great, and the distribution of the football to a Jerry Jeudy. I don't really want to knock Jerry Jeudy right now. The drop issues are concerning. And that was something we watched at Alabama as well. He had like a 14% drop rate, like a high drop rate for a guy that's considered as a number 1 wide receiver. But let's be real here, guys. He came into a situation with Cortland Sutton being the number 1 wide receiver. He was never expected to play in this kind of a role. And Tim Patrick, who's also played phenomenally against the Jets last week. Let's be real here. But Jerry Jeudy is getting 7, 8, 9 targets. He's one of 3 rookies, I think it is, that has 50-plus receiving yards in his first 4 games. One of 3 rookies in NFL history. Like, stop hating on the guy. Like, this for real. He's playing at a phenomenal level, and if he has 50 yards against the New England Patriots, he'd be the first wide receiver in NFL history to have 50-plus receiving yards in his first 5 NFL games. Like, the Broncos are getting him involved. They're getting him involved, and they're trying to focus him in the passing game. And it's not fair for him. Shortened off season due to the word that should go unmentioned. No preseason. And obviously your quarterback situation has failed you. Your wide receiver 1, the guy that was supposed to get the lion's share of the targets on the opposite side, take away some of the coverage from you going across the middle, also on the outside for Jerry Jeudy. Like, he's playing a high level of football. So don't quite give up on him yet.
Yeah, it'd be silly to give up on him. And again, if you go check out the coach's film or just really focus on Jeudy, he's getting open. There's no doubt about it. You can see the ability to separate is there. It really comes down to chemistry and timing of the quarterback and having a quarterback that's worth their snuff to take advantage of that. And with Locke gone, I mean, Rippon is a good story. I mean, if he can end up being the Broncos' backup for what they paid to get him here as an undrafted free agent, not using draft capital and a cheap contract, that's great. But Rippon does not belong as a starter on any team unless that team is going for the number 1 overall pick. And we saw how bad Jeff Driscoll is. So that's honestly, people are talking about contracts that stink. That Jeff Driscoll one looks really bad in hindsight, considering there are other options. But guys, we got to get out of here soon. But before we do, we got to say hello and thank you to the one and only Pabby. How you doing? Good to see you. Excited for the Sunday's game. It'll be a good game. Go Broncos. Thank you so much for that. It's always great to hear from you. And guys, that's going to do it for our show today. We did not get into some of the conversation going on here about the draft talk with the tackle position. Got a long off season. We're still in the season, so don't worry, guys. We're going to have plenty of draft talk. Honestly, that's what a lot of us were even brought to Mile High Huddle for, is that we kind of found each other because we were so psychopaths about the NFL draft process and team building that kind of just found ourselves and ended up getting here. But we appreciate you guys a heck of a lot. Lance, I appreciate you coming on here today, taking time. I know that you said you had an unhappy offspring because of the kind of almost due to my line of work. But I'm hoping that your girlfriend is holding it down and the little one is feeling a little better.
And like I said, he's just a little fussy. He got his immunizations today. This first round of them, he's got another 2 months. He's going to get another round, and so on until he's about a year old. But now we're doing good. She's handling it like a champ. She's doing a great job. Every now and again, she's like, "Take him, please, get him away from me. I'm tired of him screaming at me." But no, everything's good on our end. We're doing great. Thank you, Nick, for thinking about me first and come. Well, I don't know if you thought about me first, but you at least asked me to come on. I appreciate that. But no, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Let's do it again sometime, and maybe one of these days we can get you to come and guest host on Dove Valley Deep Divers. That'd be a pretty good, interesting show to get you and Eric going back and forth on my ridiculous takes. How about that?
I mean, I'll try to be a little bit more Iowa nice than whatever the heck's going on up there in Alaska. That's going to do it today, guys. You can find Lance on Twitter at SandersonMHH. You can find myself on Twitter at Nick Kendell MHH. Also know that Mile High Huddle, who we work for, is an affiliate of Sports Illustrated. Go to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment. You can say that, or don't leave us a 5-star rating. Just let us know what you think, whether you like us or don't like us. Anybody particularly, any show particularly, let us know what you like. Also on YouTube, like, subscribe, and share. That's probably one of the things that you can do most to help us. If you're watching on Facebook, click the like reaction or the heart emoji or the laugh emoji. Sometimes we see that. Sometimes I'll say something in regards to a running back or something, and somebody will give the laugh emoji because, oh God, here goes Nick again. But we really do appreciate that. Anything that you do like that can really help us continue to bring you these Denver Bronco deep dives. Follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Lance, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. A long wait until that next game, but still riding the high from that victory. And hopefully we'll have another one this upcoming week against the hated New England Patriots.
You're right.
Love y'all. We'll see you next time.
Hey, stay safe. Stay safe.